Hey, here are 5 stupid things I've noticed about pro wrestling. Needlessly complicated storylines. I've been a wrestling fan most of my life, and I'm not difficult to please. Show me 2 wrestlers capable of having a good match with each other, and then show me the match. One of the frustrating things about wrestling since the 1980s, particularly in the WWE, has been how much time and energy are wasted on TV every week creating reasons for people to wrestle each other. I've got a good reason, because they're wrestlers, and that's their job. Not everything has to be a personal issue. It's okay to have 2 guys fighting just because they want to win the fight. It's fine to bring their personalities into play. In fact, UFC has done a great job promoting their legitimate fights in just this way. But spending all this time creating convoluted justifications for rivalries between competitors in what is supposed to be a sport is usually a waste of time. The homoerotic homophobia. Pro wrestling is the most homoerotic thing on television. It's also the most homophobic thing on television, except when there's a Republican debate on. You'd have to leave media altogether and turn to Christianity or Islam to find something else that is so fearful and hostile to gays while simultaneously being so incredibly gay itself. No wrestler embodies these qualities better than the Iron Sheik, whose every utterance is saturated with anti-gay bigotry. The guy can't even complain about drink service on an airline without blaming it on gay people. And yet, look at this photo of him from back in his prime. I know I'm stereotyping here, and I apologize, but come on. Does that look like a straight dude to you? The Hogan made wrestling myth. I would never argue that the rise of Hulk Hogan in the 1980s wasn't a major turning point for the pro wrestling industry. But this idea that before the WWF put Hogan on top, wrestling was limited to running shows in smoky bingo halls is just silly. Bruno Sammartino was selling out Madison Square Garden. Hell, Bruno and Larry Zbyszko headlined a show at Shea Stadium years before most people had even heard the name Hulk Hogan. Dusty Rhodes headlined sellout shows all over the country throughout the 1970s. Hell, in 1961, 23 years before Hulk Hogan won his first WWF title, Buddy Rogers and Pat O'Connor wrestled in front of 38,000 people in Comiskey Park. Was Hogan a big deal? Dude, Hogan was fucking huge. But was it all small town promoters running their local high school gym before he came along? Fuck no. Pandering to mainstream audiences. Pro wrestling has a major inferiority complex. No matter how popular it gets, no matter how many movies The Rock makes, no matter how many wrestlers get booked on late night talk shows, wrestling will always be wrestling. And there will always be people who will laugh at it because, let's face facts, it's really, really stupid. But that doesn't stop wrestling promoters from trying to win those people over. I'm thinking specifically of Vince McMahon here. Vince doesn't even like to call his show pro wrestling. He prefers sports entertainment. He's been trying to get that over for 25 years and it still hasn't quite stuck. But wrestling reaching out to non-wrestling fans to try to seem hip and mainstream is a lot like Christians trying to convince non-Christians that church is really cool. Everybody knows it isn't true. It comes off as desperate and pathetic, and it ultimately runs the risk of alienating your loyal fans who buy our tickets because we know how stupid wrestling is, and we don't care, we love it anyway. Also, some of us still haven't caught on that it's a work. Know-it-all wrestling fans. And some of us have. The so-called internet wrestling community is great because it gives us wrestling fans a place to talk to each other about wrestling without bothering normal people with it. The problem is, the more we talk to each other and listen to each other, the more we think we know. And it's so easy to fall into the trap of talking about wrestling as though we're more than just fans sitting in the stands or watching on TV at home. We start to think we know who should be pushed and who shouldn't, who should work with who should be hired and who should be fired. We start to think that we could run the show better than the promoters and bookers who actually run it. We start to think that we know more than they do, but we almost never do. See, wrestling nerds are no different than sci-fi nerds, comic book nerds, any other kind of nerd. They're entitled, they're bitchy, and they're snobby. And being snobby about pro wrestling, That's a whole different kind of stupid. The hardest part is only picking 5. Catch you next time.